Do you think conventional economics actually underestimating the benefits of the internet? Do you buy on that?
Let me just respond to the inequality thing first. So I don't think, I think we should maybe start by talking a little bit about where the inequality is actually experienced. And Silicon Valley is in some ways a very unequal place. And when people leave Silicon Valley, it's not because there are no economic opportunities. It's because the real estate costs too much. And there's some studies I've seen where almost the entire increase in inequality in the last 20 or 30 years is simply increase in inequality of land ownership. If you were a Stanford graduate 50 years ago, you got a job at Hewlett-Packard, you could have gotten a 3-bedroom starter home as a 22-year-old in Palo Alto. And so in a way, this is how the stagnation manifests itself in land prices. As a venture capitalist, I often think that almost all the venture capital money I'm investing is going to urban slumlords in the form of incredibly onerous commercial leases, and of course the fairly high salaries you have to pay people in Silicon Valley, which they have to then pay to rent to all their landlords. And this is maybe maybe this is loosely linked to tech because we're a networked economy and it's very hard to do things outside of Silicon Valley, and you have networked cities like New York City or London for finance. But I think that's sort of where the problem is, and then the remedy in my mind would be that you seriously think about changing zoning laws or things like that. There's an economist I always like to refer to in the late 19th century, Henry George, who had this. There was this theorem that I think Stiglitz actually proved about 100 years later, the Henry George theorem, which says that in a certain kind of urban area where not enough new things can be built, all the value gets captured by landlords. And so, Reid's saying, you're saying the value gets captured by a few tech entrepreneurs. Reid's saying it's this consumer surplus that gets captured by everybody. And I think the question we have to ask is perhaps a great deal of it was actually just captured by landlords. They're not the people who get put on the front pages of magazines. But that's the way in which inequality is extremely profound. And I think if you solve the zoning problem, I don't think people would have problems with some people making more money than others in crypto or at Google or anything like that. It's just the land use problem.
I suppose I'm struggling a bit to believe that there are somewhere hidden in these neighborhoods landlords making more money from rents than you guys are making from your investments.
But collectively, it's much more distributed. But yeah, it's been a phenomenal bull market in the land price. My parents got a home in Foster City when just north of here for $120,000 in 1978. Today it's worth $2.5 million. And if you were in the older generation in the U.S. and you got a house in a major urban center, you were able to retire. If you didn't, you weren't able to save for your retirement. So and then if you're a young person, it's almost impossible to even get started.
It was a pupil of Henry George who came up, if memory serves, with the game Monopoly.